Let's see, started. Awesome. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the very first session of Get Ready. My name is Wilan Spochter, and I will be your host. And with me today, I have a very special guest, Kulekane Zungu, who will be our guest speaker for today. And he will be covering the topic on mastering your job search by giving such some interview preparation skills, as well as CV optimization tips as well, and much more, right? So just to give a little bit more of like a brief of what this whole initiative is about before I give it over to Kulu, that will be taking most of the session. This session was basically initiated as a way of what is lacking currently within the community. And I saw something that was lacking, which was basically a space for young people that's basically striving to do the best, but also to share their knowledge based on industry information that they have based on the experience. So this initiative, which is called Get Ready, is there to support young professionals, but not just that, but to cultivate basically a culture of sharing. As yes, we learn from our own experiences, but I think it's important for us to also share that knowledge so that we can basically help each other grow. So this is a monthly session that will be taking place. We're kicking it off this month as it was also youth month. So please be on the lookout. It is different industries every month. So we're just not focusing on one industry. We're focusing on a wide variety of industries. And this is also a great way for you to network with people in different industries. And I'm a strong believer that we shouldn't just be networking with people. Let's say you are in finance, you will find yourself that you mostly network with people that's in your same industry. But it's important to have that cross industry network as we live in a world where our industries kind of still speak to one another, and you also cultivate a way of how you speak, how you engage with these different types of people, but at the same time we all have the same goal, which is to strive as young people in this country and bring a change. So I'm going to quickly do an introduction of Kule. So Kule is an amazing person. He is based in Johannesburg, and is relevantly young. One thing also about all the speakers, well, most of them are that they are young people. So it's basically for young people by young people because we can do whatever we want to. So he's a technical talent acquisition at B Bank. He has 3 years experience within the tech industry, and his roles also include hiring top tech talent across product, finance, as well as engineering and marketing, and the list goes on, right? He also has been getting a few awards, such as the Rising Star Award, and he also runs, he actually added small business, but I don't believe no business is small business. So he runs a business, which he'll also elaborate on, which is called Resume Revampers. And basically, he'll give a little bit more insight with regards to what it is that he does to help basically cultivate the youth and people to get them employed. And in his spare time, he's also a man of God. So he loves exercising and spending time attending church and devoted as a devoted Christian. So I'm going to hand it over to Kule. I'm going to stop my recording. And also, please note, not the recording, I'm going to stop the presentation. Also note that there will be some time for you to ask any questions, so be free. You can either use the chat, but Kule will also give an indication if you want to unmute yourself. So Kule, I'm going to hand it over to you, and thank you so much again for being an eager person. I know being the first speaker can be a little bit, but I know you're gonna kill it. So thank you so much, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Vivian. I really appreciate it. And yeah, this initiative for me is something amazing. We definitely need to empower people who are recent graduates, people who are getting into the workforce. And so, super honored to be the first guest. It is very nerve-wracking, but I'm hoping that this is a very informative session. I hope that people learn a lot about the job hunt. I'm here to tell you a little bit more about essentially my experience and the background of job hunting and how you can secure interviews, secure a job, and propel your career. So without further ado, I'll get started by sharing my presentation. Um, okay.
Also, I did forgot to add, I know for those who's new to Teams, there's also reaction. So we want to ensure that this is a very engaging session. So you can see these react. So please show some love for Kule. We maybe can start off with that, maybe like a heart or a clap so that we can get the energy going. I know it's a virtual event, but very important. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. All right, so Whelan, just wanted to double check you can see my presentation.
I think it's coming. Let's give it some time.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, we can see your presentation.
Okay, perfect. All good. So yeah, I've decided to title this presentation Elevate Your Career, Interview Mastery and Resume Optimization. So those are the two main topics that I'll be covering in
Quick
partnership with.
question. Sorry to interrupt. It shows audience window, so I think you just need to.
All right, here we
Yes,
go.
awesome. There you go.
Thank
Perfect.
you. All right, so let's get started. So just to start off, I wanted to thank everybody for joining. This is very exciting, and this is something I hope to be doing in the future. So thank you for the support. And just to start off, can you type in the chat where you're from? Whether you're from a specific city in South Africa or from abroad. I'm just quite interested to see where different people are from. So you can go ahead and start typing. All righty. Got Kanya from Knysna, Nomfundo from Johannesburg, Zecho from Joburg as well, and Lisa from Cape Town, Daisy from Nairobi, Kenya, Lauren from Cape Town, Daryl from Cape Town, Nitumeling from Joburg, Gitumetse from Joburg, Karabo from Joburg, Naledi from Soweto, Joburg, Cape Town, Nairobi, Joburg. All right, so it seems like we have quite a heavily Johannesburg / Cape Town crowd. Couple of people from Durban, couple of people from Cape Town as well. Yeah, thank you so much for typing your location. Yeah, just important to see who I'm speaking to and hopefully tailor the message as well, in particular for South Africans. So let's go ahead and get started. So just to briefly introduce myself, Whelan already touched on that really nicely, and thank you for that, Whelan. Just wanted to do a personal introduction of myself. So I'm currently a technical talent acquisition partner at a company called BVNK. BVNK functions as a business-to-business payments platform. So we've built a platform that enables businesses to transact either in cryptocurrency or fiat currency through the platform, keep their money on our platform as well, earn a yield. And so we're trying to work as a payments facilitator, almost something like a Swift payments, but essentially catering for blockchain payments as well as fiat currency payments. So just a little bit of an introduction from myself. So I studied politics and sociology at UCT. I then moved on to English teaching online for about 2 years. And then I started to realize that talent acquisition was quite a big field and it was quite a prominent field at the time. So I decided to take a couple of courses and just gain some expertise in the field. And so that enabled me to get my first job as a talent associate at a company called Move, which functioned as a talent acquisition as a service. So you embed talent teams into specific organizations in order to grow those organizations, and then you kind of move out and onto the next one. So that was a very exciting time. I learned a lot of expertise moving into different organizations. And then from there, after about a year, I moved into BVNK as a talent acquisition partner, and I just had my 2-year anniversary this month. So in amongst all of this, I also decided to start Resume Revamper in 2022, essentially offering services to anyone, particularly services with resume optimization, ATS compliance, which I'll get into a little bit later in the presentation. I also do cover letters, and this covers various industries. So I've had clients from finance, tech, banking, energy, and more. So I've covered a lot of different industries and gained a lot of expertise. So just moving on to the itinerary for today. So I'm going to cover essentially 4 main points. I wanted to start off with sharing a couple of lessons that I've learned as a recruiter. There are a lot of kind of tips and tricks that I've learned about essentially the job search and how to land the right job. So I wanted to share those tips with you. Moving on to that, what are you doing wrong with your CV? I'm here to help, don't worry. I'll detail what not to do and what to do with your CV. I'll show you essentially examples of good and bad CVs as well. And then moving on to that, I will move on to interview tips. So moving from associate level to CEO, by the time all of you are entering interviews, people want to hire you on the spot. I'll give you all my tips and tricks, things that I've seen in interview processes, and then moving on by finishing with Resume Revamp. I'll tell you a little bit more about my business and how I can help you. And then we'll head to questions closer towards the end of the presentation. All right, perfect. So I just wanted to start off with essentially lessons that I've learned as a recruiter. I'll start off with my first point, LinkedIn being your best friend. I can't stress this enough. In every recruitment role I've worked with, we've had to use LinkedIn, specifically LinkedIn Recruiter, to look for the best candidates possible. So as someone who is searching for a job, as someone who already has a job as well, LinkedIn it should be your one-stop shop. It should be something that you log on to every day, something that you keep up to date as well. A lot of recruiters and a lot of other businesses are constantly keeping their eye on your LinkedIn profile. It's the one tool that you have to honestly get into the workforce and to essentially market yourself as an employee, market yourself as someone with a specific skill set as well. It should be your main focus in your job search. It should be your main focus, even if you have a long existing job as well. People are constantly on the hunt. I know of situations where some of our employees have kept their LinkedIn profiles up to date and as a result gotten really great opportunities to co-found particular companies. They've gotten opportunities at Google, opportunities at Microsoft, like Whelan. So all these big organizations do focus on LinkedIn as the one source to see, how you interact with others as well. It's almost like I would pin it up almost as your CV coming to life. It really gives employees and organizations a really good look at who you are as a person. It shows your interactions, it shows what you're interested in as well. I just wanted to share a couple of fun facts about LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has 1 billion users as of 2024 and has 19,000 employees across the world. So just from those statistics alone, we can see that LinkedIn is the biggest platform for work, for networking, for growing your personal brand, for making the right connections, for joining special interest groups as well. The opportunities on honestly endless on LinkedIn. And another fun fact being 6 people are hired on LinkedIn every minute, and 140 job applications are submitted every second. And there are 1.6 billion people who visit LinkedIn monthly. So you're part of a very large group of people by using LinkedIn, but it just goes to show that it's a perfect platform to get you hired quickly. Employers are constantly on it. It's the one place where you just know you can look at your employment pool and make the right decision. And there's a lot of information. You can also learn a lot about individuals through who they're connected with. You can see what they are interested in based off of their connections. There's also a functionality on LinkedIn to follow specific companies. So recruiters tend to look at who you follow in terms of the other companies to gauge your interest level as well. If you're following companies that align with their values and align with their, I'd say, mission, then it's an easy bet for them. They're able to vet you very quickly. So that's my first point as a recruiter, being LinkedIn is your best friend. If you don't have an account already, I strongly suggest that you sign up. It's a great platform to use. It's constantly growing as well, constantly iterating. From the back end side with LinkedIn Recruiter, I've seen a lot of AI being used as well in order to source the best talent and helping us as recruiters find the best talent. So you don't want to find yourself being on the outskirts of that. You might as well update your LinkedIn profile, make sure everything is in order to make sure that you're easily visible and essentially prioritized within the system. Just to
Kule,
move. Oh, yes.
Before you move on, I just actually want to also touch base if you don't mind. Apologies. So, as
No,
you mentioned, LinkedIn, that is literally how I got recruited as an intern working at Microsoft now. I got recruited via LinkedIn as a recruiter reached out to me. And I think a lot of people think that LinkedIn is only for people that are in certain industries, but it is not. I even start seeing influencers now using LinkedIn as a platform to kind of create the profile of not just being a social media person, but now using that as a professional way to also connect and network with other people in other industries. So I just wanted to add that. And one thing also, as I mentioned, this is also a networking experience. So if you want to, you are more than welcome to even add your LinkedIn profile, your LinkedIn link profile in the chat to connect with one another. Thank you, Kule.
no problem at all. Yeah, and I strongly encourage us connecting with each other and adding our LinkedIn links to the chat. I definitely feel that's a very important aspect. And yeah, LinkedIn also just a great tool for networking as well. There are a lot of special interest groups that I've also seen on LinkedIn. For example, at BVNK, we were tasked with finding Black female engineers, specifically in the UK, because we wanted to essentially spur diversity, specifically within our core banking. So we had to scour LinkedIn to find special interest groups, and there were a lot of groups that specialized with Black females in engineering and in tech in general. Very helpful, because then you essentially enter the group, you're able to then see who's part of the group. You're already able to gauge their interest based off of what the group stands by and the morals of the group. So a very good way to essentially assess someone very quickly. So if you have LinkedIn as well and you aren't part of any special interest groups, I suggest you do that. I've personally joined a couple of interest groups just to do with essentially blockchain payments, cryptocurrency and B2B payments, just because it's an area of interest for me. So I'd strongly suggest that you do that. And then moving on to my second, or let me say rather my third point about keywords into your CV being a very crucial step in the job application process. So essentially, when recruiters are searching your, or let me say looking at your CV first, and searching for specific candidates, we use keywords in order to find people that already have that skill set, and your CV, including those keywords, is a vital step to show us that you already have the expertise without having to speak to you first. A lot of people tend to add fluff to their CVs in order to make it look longer or perhaps make it look more professional. But as recruiters, we read through a CV very, very quickly, and I'll get through that process a little bit later. But the point being, input keywords that are part of your everyday job and part of your industry as well. It's important to, obviously, as an employee, you should be keeping up to date with the latest tools, and you should be using tools that are industry standards. And if you don't know which tools are industry standards, make sure you follow people that are part of companies that are always pushing the barriers, are always innovating. That's a very quick and easy way to figure out if the current tools that you're using in your organization are backdated, or let me say outdated or not. But inputting those keywords into your CV also helps later on, with essentially when you upload your CV to a specific job application, it will highlight the keywords in correlation with the job you're applying for. Very, very important step, because I've seen people lose out on that first stage interview simply because they didn't have the right keywords in their CV. They were using filler words or words that were outdated in correlation with the role, and that ended up putting them on the back foot. I had to then review their CV again, which is additional time that a lot of recruiters don't have. And companies like keeping their teams lean. So there's never an abundance of recruiters in an organization. If you don't get, let's say, feedback from an interview, or get an email response from submitting your application, it's because we're very short staffed as recruiters, even though there's a lot of us, but companies like to keep their teams lean. So just make sure to include the right keywords. A quick Google search will help you with this. If you're not too sure what keywords are important for your particular role, a quick Google search will help you with that. An example, for example, with engineering, if I'm looking at an engineering CV, I'll be looking for keywords like AWS, Docker, Kubernetes, GitLab, CI/CD. These are all technical terms that engineers do in their day-to-day, but some of them don't include those terms in their CVs. So then we end up second guessing what their skill set is like. So if your particular niche has also very particular tools that are used in your day-to-day or in your field, very important to add those to your CV. And then next, I wanted to speak about the ATS, the applicant tracking system. So this is something that I was exposed to when I started my recruiting role. I didn't quite understand what the process was between submitting a job application and then getting email feedback from a recruiter. So what happens is, when you apply for a job, let's say on LinkedIn or Indeed, your resume will go directly to an applicant tracking system. Every recruiter uses one. It's a system that we keep all our candidates on. You're automatically uploaded through the information you input on LinkedIn or Indeed. And then you're stored there until we are able to read through essentially your skill set. But the catch with an ATS is that sometimes, because we don't like filtering through too many applications, we will set specific barriers. We call them rules. So we'll set specific barriers in place to make sure that unqualified candidates don't make it through. So if, for example, we're looking for a backend engineer, I'll stick to the example, and we are looking for someone who's got proficiency in AWS Glue, for example. If you don't have that on your CV, you won't even pop up on our ATS. It'll automatically remove you from the ATS and then automatically send a rejection email. So you could be processed and we wouldn't even know. So that's why I'm also emphasizing the need for keywords. Specifically for the jobs that you're applying for, because you will get automatically rejected without even having a chance, which I think is not the greatest way to go about things. But when you are receiving, I'll use an example of a role that we recently opened up for a manual quality assurance engineer. We received about 200 applications in about 6 or 7 hours. So going through all of those is very strenuous. It's very time consuming. And a lot of you know recruiters don't have the time to go through all of those. So again, keywords are super important. Make sure that you are adding the keywords so that you also get through the ATS and you get through that first round, so that you can be interviewed by a recruiter. So just moving forward from this, I wanted to move on to two systems that I use every day. Number one being LinkedIn Recruiter in order to source talent, and then the second one being Greenhouse, which is an applicant tracking system that we use to filter candidates. So I just decided to add a couple of screenshots just to show you the actual system and how it works. So on the left, you'll see a couple of headings: job title, locations, skills and assessments, companies, keywords. So we use those in order to find the best talent. The reason why I'm also emphasizing keeping your LinkedIn up to date, and making sure you input all the right information is because if something's inputted incorrectly onto your profile, you won't pop up on LinkedIn Recruiter. It won't pick up your location, it won't pick up your job title if you didn't input it correctly. One big thing that I was taught when I was starting off with recruitment is that if you have a spelling error in your job title on LinkedIn, that will completely throw you out. The ATS won't pick you up. The recruiter system won't pick you up either. So make sure everything is spelled correctly, especially your location, your job title, and your company. Super important because we do search by company. We search by skill set as well. On LinkedIn, there are sections where you can add particular skills per job that you have. It may seem like something small, but it's very important because we end up searching by skill. It also shows that you are keeping your LinkedIn up to date and adding details. So that's essentially the left side. Moving on to the middle section, this is what we refer to as advanced search. So this is where we're able to search candidates by all these headings that you're seeing: first name, last name, network relationships, profile languages as well, your zip code. It gets really, really detailed. So take some time to make sure that your LinkedIn is up to date, and take some time to make sure that all the data is inputted correctly. I sometimes test our internal employees to see if their LinkedIn's are up to scratch by essentially searching their job title and seeing if they pop up. If I can do a title search and a keyword search and your name pops up in my organization, then I know you've already aligned with to the organization and what we're looking for. So that's just something to note.
Yeah, Kuli, this is really, I think this is really insightful. Well, I'm finding it really insightful. I think there was a hand, Lutando, you had a hand raised. I'm not sure, but then you drop your hand again. So but
Yes.
I'm not sure if they're gonna come on mute and come back. Maybe it
Sorry.
was the action. But what I wanted to touch base on, because I think sometimes, especially when a lot of people start applying and they start getting frustrated, it can be something as simple as having a spelling error, because now you're like, I have all these qualifications, I have everything, but I'm just not getting the job. And sometimes it's in the small detail. We focus so much on the other stuff, but in the small detail, we basically kind of get filtered out. So this is actually really, really important, because I think we tend to like not put a lot of not information, not a lot of like attention to the small details, but that is basically some of the stuff that kind of filter yourself out. So I see, Lutando, you have your hand raised. You happy to unmute yourself if you have a question for Kuli, because it might be related to this before we move on.
No problem.
Awesome. Thank you. Good evening once again. Just a quick question for you, Kule. With regards to the tracking system, does it read PDFs or it's word specific?
Yeah, very good question. So I will touch a little bit on ATS a little bit later as well, but it reads both.
Right,
So
awesome.
if you're inputting your CV in either PDF or Word, the ATS will read it. I'll explain the ATS in the next slide, and essentially what is favorable for an ATS versus what normally gets rejected. But yeah, very good point, Whelan. It is in the small details. I've seen some of the strongest backend engineers type in backend with 3 E's and then get immediately discarded just because they made that small mistake. So it's very important because LinkedIn is as precise as it gets as a system. So I just wanted to lastly touch on the bar above called spotlights. So spotlights refers to essentially candidates that LinkedIn has picked out as being like of importance to your search. So on the left side, we'll see, for example, open to work. Another very important aspect of LinkedIn, if you are searching for a job, add your open to work banner. Not only are you letting everyone in your network know that you're on, you're on the market, but it also lets the system know and ends up prioritizing you. So when I start a search on LinkedIn Recruiter, people who have the open to work banner will pop up first. I will go through those candidates first before I go through anyone else. So that banner, again, a small detail, but super duper important. Active talent. So this one is a little bit more layered, but kind of easy to understand. Um, it looks at people who are actually active on LinkedIn, log in, comment, like, and create posts. So if you are a frequent LinkedIn user and you're interacting with other people, again, you'll be prioritized by the system. If you're not active, LinkedIn assumes that you won't actually accept the message that I send, which is why it's highlighted under spotlights. The whole point being we have a limit on the amount of messages we can send. It's almost like a package. So LinkedIn will try and get the most interested people in front of me first. So again, being active on LinkedIn is just as important as keeping the details sharp. You won't be prioritized in a recruiter's search if you are not active on the platform. Doesn't mean you have to be active every day as well. It just refers to people who are active within a month time span. So if you log on once a month, you will be part of the active talent pool. Rediscovered talent as well essentially looks at candidates that we've looked at before who will essentially be rediscovered in the search. So that's more so for us um, as opposed to essentially all of you. And then internal candidates would be people who work for my organization and then interested in your company. So if you come across a company that you like, make sure to follow the company page. So there's a little button underneath the name of the company where you can click follow. This is important because then it'll show you as interested in the company. And so when I do a search, I can see those 5 people who have followed BVNK, and it'll tell me when they followed BVNK as well. So I'll see a lot of candidates, it'll say has followed BVNK's page since 2021. That already in my mind tells me that, okay, these people are quite interested. They have been looking at our page for some time and they're probably interested in finding out more about the role. So that's why I wanted to add spotlights, just to let you know that as a potential job seeker, super important to make sure you're active, make sure all your details are in line, make sure you connect with the right people and people in the organization, make sure you follow the company's page to show that you're interested in the organization. And then I wanted to move on to...
Before, sorry again, apologies. We have a question and it might be related to what you're talking about. So therefore I don't want to go ahead. But go ahead and unmute yourself, please. Also please introduce yourself if you don't mind. But you can go ahead and ask your question to Kule.
Hi, I'm Khosiami. I just wanted to find out, so usually we have this message that pops up. It says you've appeared in like 7 searches. What does that mean? Because it comes up like quite frequently, but then, yeah, I don't know what it means.
Very good question. So that essentially means that you've popped up in LinkedIn recruiter searches. So on our side, if we have searched your name or if we've searched and seen you as a candidate pop up on the list of candidates, that means you've appeared in a particular search. Also could be referring to other people, perhaps typing your name from particular organizations. But for the most part, it means that we have, as recruiters, seen your profile in our kind of, selection of profiles, or someone else has searched your name. So those are the 2 meanings of appeared in your search.
So it's a good thing then when that happens.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a good thing because it means that your profile is being interacted with in one way or another. So that's exactly where you want to be. So super important. And as a tip from my side, focus on the companies that you appear in, the staff. It'll normally take the staff and say, okay, you appeared in the search from Microsoft, BVNK, LinkedIn, Google. Pay attention to those companies as well. They could be on the hunt. They could be searching for someone with your skill set. If you do see some sort of a link, then make sure you reach out to the recruiter in that organization. Can be anyone. Just make sure you get your foot in the door. So yeah, definitely a good thing. And then moving on to the Greenhouse ATS. So essentially, this is the system that we use to track all the applicants. I just wanted to show you all what we see when we're adding a profile. So essentially on the left side, we have a button where we can drag a resume in to pass it. So parsing refers to the process where the ATS will scan your CV and pick up key information. So the information being your first name, last name, company, your current title, what time zone you're in, any websites mentioned in your CV, your social media, your phone number, your email address, your education. So it's important to have a well-structured CV for this very reason. If we're able to add all of this information very quickly by passing your CV, it makes our jobs a lot easier and it makes the process a lot quicker for us adding you to essentially the pool, which would be the next step in the ATS. So passing, it differs from ATS to ATS. A rule of thumb would be if it's an older company, try and stick to Word as a CV format, whereas with newer companies, you can use PDF. Reason being, older companies use older tracking systems, and older tracking systems are able to scan and pass Word documents far better than PDFs. PDFs end up confusing them with essentially the character placement, leading to errors, and then we can't add your profile to the system. Just for safety and as a rule of thumb, I would say apply with a Word document. It's quite hard, obviously, to structure a Word document in a good way. But if you are applying to big corporations, the Old Mutuals, the Discoveries, the Absas, the Sanlums, your best bet is to use a Word document to upload, just because that actual that the word has escaped me. The structure of the document is easier for the ATS to pass as opposed to a PDF document. So something to look out for. And then again, make sure everything on your CV is spelled correctly. Dates are also very important because as the ATS is also passing all of your information, it adds dates for everything. Your education, where you went from high school to university, your dates for your jobs as well. So make sure everything is formatted with month and year. So you can say August 2019 to September 2020. Make sure to use the month and year when describing dates on your CV. Yeah, so that's pretty much all that I wanted to touch on with regards to the Greenhouse ATS. There are multiple ATSs out there. Some are newer than others. Greenhouse is one of the most commonly used. So that's why I was happy to be able to give you all insights as to how Greenhouse works. If you are looking, for example, in tech, finance, marketing, odds are it'll be Greenhouse ATS. If not Greenhouse, then Workday, which I know is used by Old Mutual, for example. So if you're applying to, again, big corporates, use a Word document for the upload.
Awesome. We had a hand from Michaela. I'm not sure
Right.
if the question was answered as Kule was speaking, but do you still have the question? If not, you can proceed. I don't see that the hand is down now, so you can proceed.
Hi, sorry
Oh,
about
okay.
that.
No worries.
Hi everyone. So I had a quick question. I hope it's not too silly, but I heard you mention something about social media. Our social media links will pop up as well. So we're speaking, of course, LinkedIn and our activity, but is it also like Facebook, our activity there, Instagram? I'm not sure if yeah.
Yeah, definitely a very good question. So essentially with that social media tab in the ATS, that'll pick up if you've added a social media link to your CV. So if you've added the link to one of your social media profiles onto your CV, then it'll pick up the fact that this is social media and then add it to that specific area. If you don't add your LinkedIn, I'm sorry, if you don't add your Instagram or your Twitter or your Facebook to your CV, then nothing will pop up under social media. I personally don't think there's a need if you're not in social media marketing or some sort of brand design. I don't think there's a need to add your personal social media link onto your CV. I think it's just slightly too personal. You don't need your employer knowing it. It's not going to affect how you perform in the role unless it's stipulated for the role itself. Yeah, so I hope
Thank
that
you.
No problem.
And
It
thanks,
helps.
Michaela. No question is a silly question. I
Not
think
at all. Love
that's
the
a
question.
really good question that you
Yeah.
actually asked. So thank you. We have another question in the chat. I'm not sure if you want to take it later or now, Nomfundo. You wanna let me just read it out or
I'll have a read now, no problem. Which industry do you think make the most, make use of the most recruitment services and LinkedIn platform? So in terms of industries that make the most use, let me say, of recruitment services and LinkedIn, it really varies across industry, to be honest. I know finance is a big one, so is tech and so is marketing. But this varies. I just from personal experience wouldn't think that, let's say, for example, construction or energy would use LinkedIn and other recruitment services as much as, let's say, tech, finance, marketing, that sort of thing. It also depends on the nature of the industry. A lot of industries are essentially grown as a result of personal communications, as a result of having a coffee with someone, meeting in a specific place, conventions, seminars, that sort of thing. So with those industries, they tend not to rely too much on LinkedIn and or other recruitment services. But for companies that essentially gain most of their revenue online, either through some sort of a website or through an app or through a platform, then they'd be fools not to use a LinkedIn or an ATS to filter their candidates. So I hope that answered the question. Yeah, perfect. So then I'm gonna go ahead and move on to a good versus a bad CV. So just to give you a little bit of background, I've been in recruitment for about 3 years now. I on a day-to-day basis, I'd say I look at about 50 CVs per day. So at this point, I've seen thousands. I've seen really good ones. I've seen really bad ones. I've seen CVs from different industries, different organizations, different seniorities as well. All CVs, I believe, should follow similar conventions. Again, it depends on your industry as well, because, for example, I came across a client who worked specifically in engineering. He had to list every project that he's been a part of on his CV. So as you can imagine, that made the CV look very clunky. There was a lot of text, but things like that, there are allowances for things like that depending on your industry. But for the most part, no one wants to read a very long CV. So yeah, just to essentially run through a couple of points, your CV should be concise, between 1 and 2 pages. People tend to feel the need to add all their experience onto their CV as if that's the only thing that they can use to speak for themselves. But now we're in the era where LinkedIn is there. You can add more information on LinkedIn. You can make your profiles as long as you want, and no one's going to bat an eyelash. And the whole point being, the CV should get you into the interview. The interview is where you explain your experience from top to bottom. It shouldn't be on your CV, and a long CV can put people off very quickly. Just to touch a little bit more also on the conciseness of your CV and how the points should be structured per role. So if, let's say, for example, you had 2 or 3 roles in the same organization, then consider that per role, or with different organizations. But per role, you should have no more than 4 or 5 points, essentially explaining what you did. You should be able to, in 2 or 3 sentences per point, be able to explain what your duties were. And if you can't, you need to figure out a way to summarize it. Again, we go through hundreds of CVs in a week, thousands over our careers. We don't have time to read paragraph for paragraph for each role, for each organization, especially as you increase in seniority. Super important to make it concise. And this conciseness and the 4 and 5 points includes promotions, internships, that sort of thing. I've come up with a sort of formula, and I've also seen it through doing some research from reading LinkedIn pages and posts, reading Indeed posts as well, where if you're structuring a point, describing what you've done in your experience, you should say, I did X with X, leading to an X increase or decrease in X. So let me explain. I'll give an example. I helped the backend engineering team with hiring 40 engineers in 8 months, leading to a 5% increase in revenue. So with describing what you're doing, there should be, first of all, numbers, you're not going to get anywhere without some sort of numerical value describing what you've done. And if you can't have numerical value, then frame it in a way that someone who is in the industry understands what you've done as something tangible. And you should be describing what you've done, with whom, and this is what the result was. So often we need to see in your job duties, what did you do? Which team were you part of? How did this task that you completed improve the organization? How did it improve efficiencies? How did it decrease time for a specific process? Um, and then some sort of financial aspect, ideally. If you don't have that financial information, that's also fine. A lot of people who are juniors don't have oversight over those financials. So a very important point being, make sure you have a tangible way of describing what you've done. If you're saying, help the backend engineering team, that doesn't necessarily help recruiters understand what you did on the ground. And when your CV gets to the high ups, because the high ups end up reading your CV as well, then they actually won't understand what you've done. And then they'll be able to also question your ability to articulate your job, which is an important part of every job, really. You need to be able to articulate your duties. So just a very important point that I thought I would touch on. Again, pulling in from earlier on when I spoke about the appropriate keywords, make sure the keywords are tailored to your organization, tailored to your industry, tailored to your particular job. If you are confused about which keywords to use, another point being, go onto LinkedIn and connect with people who have the job that you want, or the job you're looking for, or the job that you aspire to down the line. You'll be able to get good keywords from them, especially if they are already in the company that you're aspiring to get to. So a very important point there. And then AI should be used, I believe, everywhere and anywhere, but specifically with your CV, there are now AI-based tools that are able to do all of this for you. You're able to input a couple of keywords. It's able to describe what you've done in a concise way using kind of pre-measured terms or sentences, depending on your industry. You're able to just plot those onto your CV. It does the structuring for you as well. And then you just have to do, minor touch-ups here and there. Super important. Not all the tools are free. Some of them do cost, but most of them have some sort of a free option. So don't worry about having to pay just out the gate for it. Most people will use an AI-based tool for their CV only. So in which case, odds are you'll be able to get some sort of a free package. And I've put two examples being Rezi and Teal as AI-based CV creation tools that you can take a look at. And then just swiftly moving on to a bad CV. So rule number one, grammar mistakes. As much as we screen a lot of CVs very quickly, we're also trained to screen bad grammar very, very quickly. We can pick it up if a candidate's made a mistake. It's not the mistake itself that's the problem, more so your attention to detail. So everything in your CV should in some way speak to you as a person. If we're seeing spelling errors all over the place, it shows that you didn't pay attention to detail, because there are too many tools available, such as Grammarly, for example, that are able to help you with correct spelling in your CV. So you should be paying close attention to the grammar that you use, your sentence construction, and your spelling. Including irrelevant information. This is something I've seen particularly in the South African context. South Africans tend to add a lot of fluff information to their CVs in order to make their CVs very long. I don't know why this is the case, but it almost seems like the longer your CV, the more experienced you are, and then people add 15 points per job that they've been in, which leads to taking a very long time just to read a CV, firstly. And secondly, it includes a lot of irrelevant information. Most of those sentences won't be structured using, the formula that I was using earlier on, when you should be adding bullet points to your CV. So make sure that your information is not irrelevant at all. Poor formatting as well, which I touched on a little bit earlier on. Just make sure that everything is kind of in justified text. Make sure that you have equal spacing between your points and between each job. And then it being unnecessarily long. Anything over 2 to 3 pages is honestly far too long. It takes a while to take away things from your CV that you honestly feel should be added to it, but it's important to make sure it's as concise as possible. But again, we really now have LinkedIn. we can use that as our extended version of our CVs, and then use our CVs just as a short descriptor of what we've done. So now I wanted to move on to some physical examples of a good and bad CV. So we've got two examples of good CVs here. So you can see on the left side, there are, 3-4 points per role. Perhaps it could have been shorter, but either way, it's concise and easy to read. It wouldn't take you long to read that as a recruiter. Just to give some background context as well. There were studies done with recruiters to see how long they take to screen a CV. The average recruiter takes 6 to 8 seconds to read a CV. That's a very short space of time to make sure that I get through all of your information. So it needs to be an easy read just straight off the bat. So on the left, we can see that they're concise points. It's structured well. On the left side, we can see their skill set, what languages they're proficient at, their education at the bottom, employment at the top. Your employment should always go in descending order time-wise. So start off with your most relevant experience and go backwards. And then your profile section shouldn't be longer than 3 or 4 sentences, just describing who you are and what industry you're looking for. So for example, talent acquisition partner with 3+ years in the tech industry, looking to make an impact in project management or product-led organizations through project management initiatives. Something very small, something very concise, but there are plenty of examples on Google that you can take a look at for good and bad CVs. And then on the right as well, this person is very, very well educated, golden key at UCT. They did their honors. They are now a program manager. They were a manager of behavioral economics at Standard Bank. So you can imagine all the points that they could have put in their CV, but they also realized that they just don't have the space. So to condense all of their experience in something that's easy to read was very difficult, but they were able to do it. Now it's quite concise. There's 2 lines explaining their profile and who they are, followed by the other points. And so those are just examples. And then moving on to an example of a bad CV. On the left, we can see that, half the page is your accomplishments, the other half being professional experience. From those points, I can't tell anything about what the person did in their role. Granted, they've had a lot of experience, but it's very difficult to tell what they actually did in each role. And then on top of that, accomplishments are something that they could have touched on perhaps in the interview. They could have added maybe 2 or 3 key accomplishments, but there was no need for half a page to be dedicated only to accomplishments. So that's why I wanted to use that as a bad example. We can also see bad formatting, specifically with the dates. So that's an example on the left. And then on the right as well, very big spacing, physical address as well. There's no need for you to add every finite detail of your address. You should be adding, for example, Johannesburg, South Africa, Nairobi, Kenya. It shouldn't go further than that. If an employer needs to know your address, they'll find that out when they send you the offer. No need to touch onto that very early. And they just left big gaps. So now we can see there's one page where the only information I'm able to gather really is the person's name, where they went to school. So we can see that with bad CVs, it's just, added space for no good reason, and fillers, filling with accomplishments, filling with professional experience. So yeah, I hope that was a good juxtaposition of both a good and bad CV. And I hope I was able to share some tips that you can use in your personal CVs as well, just to touch it up. And then just to get closer towards the end, I know time is ticking very quickly, but just to move on to nailing the interview, I promise you, look at these tips, they'll want to give you the CEO position by the end of the interview. So just to start off, being timely and well presented. This is something that we speak about as a talent team, and we pay close attention to how every candidate presents themselves. Are they dressed appropriately? We're not asking you to wear a full suit. Just dress appropriately for an interview. Be in a well-lit area. Make sure you're making eye contact with the camera. Just a disclaimer for you all, I will be sharing tips based off of virtual interviews because I've been working remotely since about 2019. So I'll be sharing tips on virtual interviews. In-person interviews do have, some slight differences, but an interview is an interview at the end of the day. So make sure that you are well presented. I've had candidates arrive at interviews where the camera's underneath them. I've had candidates arrive wearing cowboy hats, wearing colorful t-shirts. These are not things that you want to see in an interview. And now we record each interview so that the senior members can review the interview prior to them having the last stage call. So it's important that from the get-go with the interview that you have with the recruiter, that you are well presented, and then using the STAR method for answering questions. This is, I'd say, the most important point in this entire slide. So I'll go through it a little bit slowly. So STAR refers to situation, task, action, and result. So you need to, when answering any sort of interview question, describe the situation, what you were tasked with, what you acted on, and what the result was. So for example, when I joined BVNK, and I used this example earlier on as well, we needed to hire 40 senior backend engineers. So we were a team of about 3 at the time. We needed to hire 40 backend engineers in a very short space of time. So if an interviewer was to ask me what I did there, I would have said the situation is we had to hire 40 backend engineers. I was tasked with finding the strongest talent through talent acquisition methods such as LinkedIn. For action, I screened plus minus 1,000 candidates, which I did throughout the process. And the result was we exceeded our target by placing 45 backend engineers in 6 months. So that's how you can describe what you've done in a particular role. An interviewer needs to know how you envision yourself in that situation, how you took ownership, how you acted, and what the result was. They need to see what tangible change happened as you are answering a particular question in an interview. So there's plenty of articles online about the STAR method and how you can apply it to different situations. I strongly suggest you do a lot of research about the STAR method. A lot of people tend to forget it in interviews. Interviews are very nerve-wracking. They are very scary. And so you sometimes tend to, ramble on, a little bit of word vomit, but that ends up putting you on the back burner because you should be able to speak concisely. They're also trying to assess your ability to communicate effectively. Very important part of essentially any role as well. So that's just on the STAR method. And then researching the organization role and interviewer. A lot of people tend to forget this step. They get excited with the idea of hopping into an interview and forget to research the organization. Researching prior shows that you've taken initiative. Researching the role as well shows that you've done your homework, and researching the interviewer is a little bit more of a personal touch. I've had interviews where the candidate perhaps wasn't doing all that well, but showed me that they researched BVNK, showed me that they were very interested in the role, did some research on me as well, and asked me some personal questions. And that ends up putting them in a favorable position to go into the next stage, just because they took that extra initiative. You won't always have the skill set for the role. You won't always have the right answers, but you can just add a couple of personal touches here and there to make sure that you're also memorable in the in the hundreds of people that an interviewer speaks to on a weekly basis. Make sure you prepare questions. It shows that you're interested in the organization. It shows that you also thought about the interview prior to joining. Be prepared for small talk as well. People think we're kind of robots who just kind of move through life and just speak to candidate after candidate. We like the small talk. We like finding out about your day. We like you asking about our days as well, what we're struggling with. Small talk builds rapport, which is very important for an interview. And the last point, but not least, is be honest. As an interviewer, we've already taken a look at your CV and a look at your LinkedIn. If you come into the interview and explaining things that are outside of your role, or perhaps duties that you are not very proficient in, we can pick that up very quickly because we've already spoken to people from different companies about this very role. I see this a lot in technical roles, being engineering, being QA, being product. People will inflate their skill set. If I don't catch it, the interviewer will catch it because that's their job. So hiring managers 90% of the time would be doing the role that you're interviewing for. So they'll catch it quickly. So honestly, just be honest about your skill set. Honesty also goes a long way and is very appreciated by an employer. And then just to wrap up, I wanted to quickly speak about my small business.
No, rephrase that, please. Rephrase.
about my business.
There you go.
Yeah. So I started my business in 2022. I realized that I was coming across a lot of CVs that weren't structured correctly, that were very long, and that was disqualifying candidates before they got started. I didn't like this at all. I felt like I needed to do something about it. Even though I was a recruiter and I was able to help some people out, I felt like I needed to take matters into my own hands and physically redo people's CVs. So that's where Resume Revamper started. My job was also, very beneficial given the fact that I look at CVs day in, day out. So I'm able to pinpoint what's wrong, what's good, and what's bad. And I decided to share that service. So just to cast your minds back to the examples that I was giving of good and bad CVs. So those two bad CVs were two of my customers that I had earlier on this year that came to me to revamp their CVs. And those good CV examples were just two examples of CVs that I created. I was able to create very succinct CVs that were compliant with the ATS as well. And some of the customers I've had have gone on to get various roles in different industries, get interviews booked in. I had a customer recently who was in her late 50s, and so she had a lot of experience, and so her CV had a lot of information. I was able to revamp her CV, and then she got the role that she was applying for within government, specifically with water development. So that was a bit of a stretch for me in terms of industry, but I'm really happy that she was able to get the role. And so this is the service that I offer. So if you're interested in getting your CV revamped by someone who looks at CVs daily, I'm more than happy to help. My email address is on this poster, and I'll share it in the chat as well. I'm also on Twitter. I sometimes tweet about essentially what points you should be looking out for in interviews, what you should be doing to your CV as well, just to share some knowledge. And that's pretty much all on my side. I want to
Thank you so much.
And super happy to answer any sort of questions, any comments. Happy to read through.
Firstly, before I go to the questions, you were absolutely amazing. I think you had me from start to the end, and I hope people were able to actually take some notes. The session is recorded if you were just wanting to listen, but you can go back and maybe just take some notes and actually apply the things that have been mentioned by Kule. We have 3 questions, and I know we're a little bit over time, but we did start like five past 6, so we take some of. So the first question that we have from France is, Aikule, thank you for the great presentation. How do I maintain relationship with someone once we've connected on LinkedIn? I usually connect with multiple people when I've attended events, workshops. However, I always find it challenging to maintain the relationship after.
That's a very, very good point. I see that on LinkedIn, people just throw requests out to people that they've never met or people that they don't share circles with. I'd say that it's important to take a more personal approach, perhaps like chatting to them, figuring out what they're doing in their role. If you see that they've changed roles, just dropping a message to say congrats on the new role or congrats on the promotion. I've seen people maintain contact with me just by looking at what I'm posting on LinkedIn. So hopefully the people that you're connecting with are quite active. So you can kind of leverage that and say, okay, I saw you posted about this the other day. I'm quite interested in this, or well done for this. LinkedIn makes it very apparent when people have liked or commented on things that you have interacted with or created yourself. So I'd say it's very important to interact with any sort of post that they're creating, just so your name is at the top of their minds. And if there's someone that you want to, do business with, or a potential employer, then keep that conversation going, asking about open roles. You can ask questions about the trajectory of the company, what new projects the company is working on, anything really just to spark the conversation. People don't respond to in-mails very often, I'd say. So definitely pay attention to, or let's say ask for people's email addresses, just so you can have that back and forth on email.
Thank you so much. And then we have a question from Yandisa. Hi Kule, what else do recruiters look out for from a prospect that maybe does not have a lot of experience for the role, but can stand out in other key things? So in other words, what else maybe is part of your checklist on top of qualifications and experience that recruiters look out for in a candidate?
Yeah, very good question. And I think this is very important for people who don't have lengthy work experience. If you are essentially kind of fresh out of university or still in university, it's important to pick up, societies or certain tasks that you can do at that time to then add to your CV. So we pay a lot of attention to the extramurals that our more junior candidates have done. short courses as well are very important. I recently had someone who joined as an intern. They didn't have any experience. They were fresh out of university and they were the first intern in the organization. The reason why they joined was because of the extramurals that they did. And they also did a lot of short courses. So I'd say that's a really good way to beef up your CV and show that you're being proactive about your career without actually having physical work experience.
Thank you. I'm not sure if the next question actually kind of ties into it, but Zizipo is asking, should I add hobbies and interests in the CV, or is it not necessary?
That's a very good question. And honestly, I'm actually not sure is the thing because I've had two different situations. I've had a situation where a CV was declined by my CEO because it was just too clunky and he just honestly he didn't want to read through the entire thing. On the other side, there was a time where I was told to recruit people based off of their hobbies. Are they doing sport? Are they active? Meaning that they're, active individuals. So jury's still out on if you should include hobbies or not. I personally like the idea of adding hobbies because it's more personal. It shows your interests. And especially small organizations like to be able to assess what type of person you are before the interview process. So if you can add that more personal information, such as hobbies and interests, specifically for small organizations, I'd say do it.
Okay. We have two more questions because I see more questions coming up. But if you have more questions, we can go at it afterwards and then just stop. But I'm gonna take two questions just to be like careful for the time. Itumeling is asking, so open to work on LinkedIn, won't it affect the relationship with your current employer or manager knowing that you are looking for new opportunities?
Yeah, tough one. It definitely does. I've seen some managers being disgruntled when their employees add open to work banners on their LinkedIn. My suggestion would be honest with your employer and tell them that you're looking and that you are unhappy in the current role. Yes, it's a very difficult conversation, but one that I think should be had anyways, because people tend to shy away from those conversations and then submit notice. That's not the right way to go about it, especially when it comes time to the endpoint of references and they have to speak to your previous manager, and then your manager will say they left without, without any sort of information. So, in order to keep that relationship good and strong, stipulate to your employer that you are on the market, that you're looking for a role. But people tend to add the open to work banner after they've submitted their notice or after they've done their notice period. And if you want to do it before, make sure it's also, people do talk, to be honest. People talk in organizations. So it's not great to add it while you're still employed. What LinkedIn has now done, which is why I love this platform, you're now able to stipulate that you're open to work without physically adding the banner. So if you just go into your profile and go into your settings, there will be a setting where you can add open to work without physically having the banner on your profile picture. What happens is you'll then be added to the open to work section on LinkedIn Recruiter that I showed you earlier on. So we'll still be able to see that you're open to work without physically having the banner.
Thank you. I think that's great advice. And last question from Caitlin. Hi, Kule. As a current intern, should I state in my CV that I'm doing an internship when applying for other positions, or just put in my role without the intern information? I get so many different perspectives on this.
Very good question. Again, at the more junior levels, internships show initiative. So you can add the fact that you're an intern. I've seen, for example, someone that I went to school with is now doing investment banking in the US. He's part of, I think, JP Morgan Chase. So he's in one of the biggest banks there is, doing investment banking. He added on his CV that he was an intern at 4 different organizations prior to getting his first full-time role. I think it shows that you are proactive. If you are part of internships, something I wish I did. In my career starting out, it's super important. It shows employers that you're willing to hit the ground running very quickly and that you've already gained a skill set prior to being a full-time employee. So I'll never speak against adding information about the various internships that you've done, regardless of where you're applying to. It shows initiative, especially as a recent grad.
So yeah, we have come to the end. Thank you for all the questions, and yet again, thank you so much, Kule. You spit some gems, like really really insightful session that I think we all can basically take from. So thank you so much again for being the eager beaver to be our first guest. As I said, this is the first of many sessions, so this will be taking place each and every month. Usually the last like week of the month. So please be on the lookout. We'll be discussing different topics. I'll be sharing on my social, so I won't be sharing a lot as I wanted to focus on this one specifically. But thanks again, Kule. This was really really great.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the platform. I hope, yeah, people got some very good, insightful information. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I just send my LinkedIn profile through. Please feel free to send me a message also if there's anything additional that you want to get information on. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. This was great. Had a lot of fun. Yeah, can't wait to see what happens with Get Ready.
Yes, thank you so much, and everyone else have a great evening. And let's end the week off on a good note. Happy
For sure.
Thursday.
Thank you so much, everyone. Good night.
Stop the